Floor up to questions. Anyone got a question? Yeah, Dan.
Especially for like Lucy, how did you get, like, obviously I'm interested in like working like in youth theatres, how like did you get up? Because that's so obviously I want to kind of start looking at running a youth theatre myself, like back at home maybe, but I'm just thinking that it's like a kind of a backup. But I'm just thinking how do you do it?
I was a member of the youth theatre that I then went on to manage. So, I started acting in youth theatre when I was 7, and really just got the bug for working alongside other young people, and carried on through youth theatre right up until I had to leave at age 21, and then was lucky enough to be offered a job to go back and work with them. And I think that in order to be a really good youth theatre director, you need to know it from both sides. You need to really understand what it's like to be a young person acting and the pressures that go alongside that it is only a hobby and it's a totally different reality from being an actor that's paid to do it, or somebody who's in work. You are a young person and understanding the challenges of being a young person and doing this as just a hobby and getting that balance right, which I don't think I've always done. And I think it's really important to to respect that young people are doing this as a hobby, but it can be really serious as well, and that you can train people well enough to go on into professional work, and knowing what those young people are coming in with the expectation of doing. As for finding work in youth theatre, there are lots of youth theatres coming up and going down all the time, especially in Birmingham. I'd say that a great place to be now is in Birmingham with some of these theatre companies that are now diversifying into youth work. Those that have set up as youth theatres are finding it really difficult to maintain that against the tide of places like Boa, places like the Rep, places like Stanscaff now, that are going into schools and recruiting people directly from schools directly into youth theatre. So I'd start by looking at those companies that are really moving youth theatre forward in different directions and offering something to those young people that says, if you come and work with us, we'll give you opportunities to perform on the main stages of our theatres or in our professional productions. But it's a difficult game at the moment, youth theatre, because drama in schools is going by the wayside, and so there isn't that kind of direct referral from drama teacher going, oh, this kid in my class is really great, I'll send them along to the local youth theatre that I know about. So yeah, there's jobs all the time coming up for people to do one-off sessions and little bits of youth theatre work. Sorry, James.
Just because you mentioned youth theatres, I just want to make a shout out for the European Festival of Youth Theatres, which is happening in Birmingham in July. I think it's the first week of July. Yeah,
really exciting. I think we had a youth festival in Birmingham 2 years ago, the Assatage Festival, that was at the Rep, and because that was so fantastic, there was so much brilliant theatre for young people, that Birmingham have decided to do this festival with young people. And it's going to be amazing to see what those young people, both from youth theatre settings and from school settings, are going to create. I don't know if you know.
No, where's that? Is that the Rep mainly?
Based
based at the Rep, yeah. But Steve, who's now across site, is really managing that to go through. Hopefully I'll get some work. Anybody in the room know anything about getting jobs?
You said back home, where's home?
In Liverpool.
Okay, and like, were you part of a youth theatre there yourself? Or?
Yeah, but I've worked with 20 Stories High.
Brilliant.
So I've just done a 6-week placement with them as part of a course. I've got connections there as well.
Great.
And obviously they're a well-established youth theatre and Cardiff's got young actors and stuff, and obviously the show on BBC and stuff. Yeah. So obviously it's just kind of...
So are you thinking of setting up here or going home?
No. I want to stay in Birmingham because I was looking at stuff to do after I graduate, like internships, and like, there's not many in Liverpool. Like, it's mainly in Birmingham, which a lot of the opportunities are. So there's not a reason for me to go back home, I don't think, at the moment.
It's interesting, and I do think it's a point to mention to those of you who are graduating, is don't forget your hometown, you know, because you won't have noticed things when you were a kid because you were a kid. You won't have noticed all that stuff that was happening. You're being told about it, especially those of you who are on the applied theatre course. You're finding out loads about the industry because that's in Birmingham, because you're in Birmingham now. But there's going to be a whole load of that, especially from a big city like Liverpool. You know, it's not sort of the middle of Shropshire. You know, there's going to be stuff going on there. Don't clutter the stage. There's enough of us doing youth theatre in Birmingham. Don't all come and jump on our jobs. No, but there is some great stuff happening here. But you could take skills that you learn here and take them back as well. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, have we got a question? No? So how about we go with the question of how you all got to where you are now? Let's start.
Yeah, cool. So my journey into creative arts was slightly different. So I went to university, I studied something that was non-creative and non-acting related. And as soon as I come back from university, I just thought, forget it. I was unemployed for a year, so while I was unemployed, I took loads of acting courses and found out a real passion for it. And then I was approached by companies and they were actually paying me to do work, and I was like, wow, this is amazing. So off the back of that, I was working in Birmingham and was getting paid to act, and I got signed to an agent in London, and I've just been fairly just enjoying what I'm doing at the moment. But most recently, I took that step where you have an idea and you think, I want to get out there and I want to execute this idea, and that has been amazing. So that's, in my intro I talked about jump prov, and that is something that's really passionate about what I do. I enjoy doing improvisational comedy, and I enjoy looking at the market and looking at what's being shown in the creative arts and noticing that there's a lack of representation and a lack of diversity, and that was something that I really wanted to champion with my project. So that's how I got into it, basically.
I'll just talk about filmmaking, because obviously I started acting at 12 and that was 20 years ago, so I won't start there because we'll be here forever. So filmmaking, so basically I took 2 years off when I became pregnant. So took 2 years off, wanted to be a mum to her for 2 years, came back into it and thought, I'm not getting an agent and sitting around waiting for the phone to ring, because that's what happened before I had her for many years. So I thought, what can I do? So I have all these ideas in my head, and I thought, it's about time they come out of my head and be put somewhere and not be wasted. Or what's going to happen is I'm going to be watching the screen and my idea is going to be on there, not because I've said it, just because someone's got in there first. So I had this idea to make a film, a 10-minute film, just a quick one. I didn't think to do anything with it, but I did. I put it into 10 film festivals, it got selected into 6 and got nominated. That was my first film, and that was in 2017, so just last year at the beginning. I've just been on a filmmaking course with Punch Records, so if you are looking to get into filmmaking, contact Punch Records, because every 6 months he's going to be doing a filmmaking course which you get to meet the BBC, the BFI. That's it, get your pens out, get them out, because it's amazing, because obviously I've just finished my film in December, we got it shown at the MAC, BFI are going to watch it, BBC are going to be watching next month, and you get to meet all these different creative people in the industry that give you advice that you wouldn't get to meet all these people, so it's a really good idea. So that my last film now is Spite, and now that's going to be doing the film festivals circuit. And that's how I got into it, really, just pushing myself and opening my own doors rather than waiting for other people to control my life and career, my career. You're in control of your own destiny, so if you've got ideas, get them out there. Don't be waiting for people to be knocking on your door. You want people to be knocking your doors, and that's what's been happening since I've been a filmmaker. So do it. Okay?
I'll talk about a little bit about being a freelancer. So similarly, after I had children, I found it really difficult to go back to the job that I did before and how much my life had changed. So it was important for me to find jobs that would fit around my kids and fit around my life. And so I applied for a job working at Birmingham Museum and Art Gallery, facilitating a young people's course there and making a new gallery for them. Sort of facilitating the young people to come up with the ideas and to sort of push ideas forward for that. And working with those young people that weren't actors, they were mainly art students and history students, and people with that kind of academic route into things, but trying to get ideas out of them. I realised how much easier it is to work with young people who are more creative and into drama, because they're more sort of forthcoming with their ideas and more outspoken, and I realised that there's a big gap there. There's a big gap for young people to actually be able to not just spout back to me textbooks, which is what these young people did for the first 4 or 5 weeks I worked with them. And there needed to be something that helped those young people to be able to express themselves, because education was lacking them in that field. You know, they weren't able to approach an idea and give their opinions on it and say, oh yeah, I want to do this and I want to do that. And I didn't want that for my own kids, and I didn't want that for young people, that only kids that were into drama got the opportunity to do that. So my work as a freelancer now, I'm trying to find creative projects where I can marry those skills, arts, history, culture, different sectors, but give those people an opportunity to express that through theatre in some way. But they're not necessarily theatre kids. You know, they haven't decided to do drama, they've decided to do something else, and then I've just shown them how to express that through drama. And I think that's been a real eye-opener actually, in how to work with a broader spectrum of people, because the theatre companies I worked with before were integrated theatre companies, but still you had to have an interest in doing drama to come to them. You weren't just picking up anybody. So now I work a lot more in schools where you get a broader demographic of kids and everybody's just forced to do a bit of drama, and you find that putting different topics in front of those children, that every child can really show you expression in different ways, and finding that expression doesn't have to be in being able to create a brilliant character or whatever else. So now I'm trying to carve out my life as a freelancer, but it's about writing down what that is. You know, being able to put your finger on what that thing that I offer is. That sort of facilitation, that creating a space where people can talk about new things and talk about things in a different way and express themselves creatively in different ways. So I'm doing a whole range of different things to just try and put my finger on it at the moment. I've been at it for about 1.5 years now, being a freelancer. And it's been really interesting because I've got all this experience of directing, producing, and I've directed and produced 2 plays during this time and facilitated loads and loads of workshops, but I still haven't quite found exactly where I want my career to go next. But that's the joy of being a freelancer, is that it's not just about goals, it's not just about I want to be there, but it's about what shall we do while we're here? What shall I do now? What do I want to do next? And especially when you've got young children, their life changes and moves, so your life has to respond to that. You know, in a couple of years, my kids will be in school, and then I'll have to do something a bit more set times that they're at school. And that's the same with anybody's life, is that you have to work alongside the other people that are in your life.
So, would anyone like to hazard a guess at what my degree subject is?
Scientist.
I'm not a scientist, although I do have a BSc, Bachelor of Science.
Was it archaeology?
Archaeology,
Yeah.
That's a good one, but no.
Maths?
Not maths, but there's a lot of maths in what I was supposed to do.
Languages?
No, not
Physics.
languages, not physics, not science. I'll tell you.
Engineering.
I have a degree in industrial economics. And I cannot really remember much of what I did on that course. But I did 3 years at Warwick. And actually, I didn't really start going to the theatre until a Labour government initiative called A Night Less Ordinary really changed my life. Which meant that instead of going to the cinema on a Friday night for £5, I could go to the theatre for the same amount of money. And I had no idea that this kind of world even existed, because I grew up on the side of a Sunday League football pitch helping to run the local football team. How I got to where I am is, I would say, through a combination of being a yes person, getting in the room and volunteering. So you're already in the right place by being here today. These things matter. Your face, is now in front of ours. I ended up getting a job in the local authority, so I worked for Birmingham City Councils on their graduate programme. It meant that I worked in 2 or 3 different departments that basically changed the course of my life, which was not corporate policy. That didn't really change the course of my life, but I was in the Safer Communities Department, and I was in city centre management, which meant that I came into contact with all sorts of people, business improvement districts who have since funded my festivals, police officers who have since sat round tables with me for safety advisory groups to help me better run public events and safely run public events. And I then ended up, as talk about getting in the room, sometimes it's about blagging your way into things as well. I once sort of gate crashed a VIP area for the International Dance Festival and ended up bumping into the chief executive of the Hippodrome, who ended up giving me a job. So you kind of have to force these things to kind of happen as well, really, because once you're in and around people and they see what you can do, and you perhaps volunteer your time or you get involved in more projects, you can then end up being project project assistant on the Cultural Olympiad for the voyage, which then means that you find out about all of this outdoor work, you help that company expand their outdoor programme, you're good at administrating, so you end up inadvertently coordinating and producing something but you didn't really know you were producing, and then progressively you end up producing a £500,000 festival. That's kind of my journey, but in between, so it means producing the outdoor stuff means a sensible head, and it means being able to manage money. So the economics thing did actually kind of come in helpful in a weird way, but at the same time, you need to see as much work, you need to be making the most of any of those initiatives where there might be cheap or free tickets, so that you can have those conversations with people, that you can understand the landscape, that you could better understand how to program, or understand who's making that work, and see as much as possible is fundamentally my advice. And volunteer. If you're not signed up to Birmingham Arts Volunteers on Facebook, that's where a lot of colleagues post those opportunities. I know that volunteering can be hard if you perhaps don't have the means that you need to be working as well. I had 3 jobs while I was at university and still, managed to kind of juggle all of that, because effectively there's then been people that have volunteered for me that I've then gone on to give paid jobs, which then when you are a freelancer is the bread and butter and, so important with what you do.
Yeah, I'd say volunteering is a massively important part of what you do, and it helps you to find out who you want to work for before having to go for an interview with them and before really committing yourself to working with the company. And that's the brilliant thing I think about the arts industry, is that so much of it is, you can do it on a whole amateur level. There's a whole spectrum of unpaid work in the arts industry and free workshops and stuff that people are doing as a hobby, but you can then try and find a way of getting the money from that. And volunteering has been massively important to me as even while I had jobs leading youth theatres for 10 years, every year I volunteered at Arts Fest, and I met loads of people through that. I volunteered for the National Trust and ended up programming loads of festivals and worked for them. So you just don't know what's going to appeal to you and who you're going to want to work with, and it's better to find out when you're volunteering from them and do a little bit of volunteering or a lot of volunteering depending on how much you like them. Volunteer.
My thing really would be that everything that you do along the journey is all important, and there's things that at the time you're not sure if it's the right thing to do, and then further down the line you're like, actually I couldn't be doing now what I'm doing if I hadn't done that then, and that's been a theme that I've probably only fully realised kind of on reflection, and realise it more and more all the time. The other one is be brave, and I wasn't always. And I think that you've all talked about taking your idea, being bold, and not waiting for it to happen. And I kind of did all of that, and then I went, whoa, I need to earn some money. I don't come from a place where I've got loads of money in the bank. I've got to go and do something here. And I loved it, but then I was like, I still want to do that. I've got to make that leap. So I'll be as rapid as I can through this, and if you want to know more, just ask, and I'll happily chat to you about it some more. I won't start with the 13-year-old being bullied on stage in green makeup and tights by his childminders daughter because she needed a boy to be in something. But that was actually in some ways quite a defining moment. And that kind of, you know, I never had any desire really to be involved in anything theatrical before that, and I didn't for a couple of years afterwards either, you know. But I'll start probably with my university degree at Manchester, and that was English and drama. So I did two, again, don't quite know why, but the idea sounded good, of doing 2 degrees over 4 years at the time. And so it was an English degree and a drama degree packed into the same amount, into that pretty much the same amount of time. But the drama course wasn't practical at all, really. You got to do 1 practical project per year. Everything was about theory, context, history, very academic approach to it. And at the time, we were all kind of up in arms about how can we be doing this and you can't do anything practical, why won't they give us access to the studios? Actually, it meant that we got out there into railway arches and upstairs in pubs and you know, kind of finding back rooms and nightclubs and all the places that we might put work on. And it really, I look back on it now, and there are a handful of people who went on to act. A lot of them had already been part of things like National Youth Theatre and those kind of things, and they were already on that trajectory, really. Things I didn't really even know existed when I was growing up. But a lot of us have come out and we've been producers, directors, filmmakers, people who have been, you know, the people who are making that infrastructure happen. And I think that is largely down to the sense that we had to work out, where does our money come from, where are we going to get a performance, how do we do a license, how do we find the safe, cheapest way of getting that set made. All of those skills that at the time were things that irritated us because we knew there was a lovely studio that we couldn't go into, but actually really honed what was possible. The defining thing really along that way, again, certain things just happen, you know. I'd always had this idea that I sort of fancied trying directing, and so I did something, you know, in the really grotty basement nightclub of the Students' Union, and it went well. And someone out of that basically said, I'm taking a show up to Edinburgh, do you fancy directing it? I was like, okay, all right, second thing I'm directing in this very public place. Brand new play, which again kind of gave a new passion for me that then followed through around new work. I could only go up for the first week to open the show in that year because I had to work for the rest of the summer to make sure that I had enough money to be back there running through the year the next year to live. And it gave me a bug though. I was there for that first week and I thought actually something exciting happens here. And I could see that a whole new world, a whole different kind of work that I'd ever encountered really before my eyes. And I met someone that year, found out about how you put a show on there, the kind of deals you had to do, the box office splits, those kind of things. And the next year I ended up taking up a show, new adaptation, but of an existing play. So a new adaptation, very political, of Accidental Death of an Anarchist by Dario Fo. And the writer and lead actor in that has since gone on to be a stand-up comedian and all these different things that at that moment none of us knew what was going to happen. But I learned about working in this tiny space, crafting, thinking about your get in and get out times, understanding how the deals work, and then ended up, in order to be able to stay that summer, got off. Not only was I ushering on other people's shows, but also got off. I knew nothing about IT. But basically I was told, don't worry, all I really need you to do is go around to the box office and say to people, have you turned it off and back on again? And literally, that was true then, as it is now. And so I was the IT support officer for this venue, like crazy. And so I did that, and basically it was just getting little bits of money to do those things, but you got to know people, so you were in that office with the producer who is now a lighting designer at the National Theatre. You know, the guy who runs that venue still runs that venue, and had founded that. And you just got to know all sorts of people through that. And then I came back though, that first full summer that I'd been there, and Manchester had long had this thing about this generation of people who'd made original work and been the best, brightest new writing talent and all of this. And I came back and I was like, well, why are all these other universities, all these other cities sending brand new work, and actually within Manchester, all right, it's a new adaptation, it's good, it's really high quality, great reviews, whatever we've done, but it's existing work. Why aren't we making the new work if there's been this history and this reputation for this? So I came back and I kind of went, right, I've done quite a bit of directing over these last 2 years, loved it, love to still do that, but actually, how do we change that? How do we get some new work about this city, about this place, representing up on those national festivals? So I came back and decided I was going to set up a writing festival. And at that point, so again, for those 2 years, I've been an usher at the Royal Exchange, so I knew a couple of, again, you're at the press nights, you're all those different things, you're opening doors, you're chatting to the actors, you're serving the coffees, you're doing all of those different things. And so I just thought, well, all right, they've got a new associate director, now their artistic director, Sarah Frankham, brilliant, open mind, open heart, passionate, change person. And I just said, and I literally just said, I've got this idea. Would you be willing to read the scripts? And I said, I'm not just going to do it from Manchester University. We're going to have Manchester University UMIST, which was the Science Institute at that time, Metropolitan University, the sixth form colleges, Arden School of Drama out on the edge of the city. We're just going to throw it open and say, right, where's the new stories? What's coming? What have we got here? And I just said, if I get a group of people who will read like that first 40 or 50 plays that come in, would you read the last 10 and help us decide a winner? And I'd set it up with that venue manager that I'd been making the coffee and turning the computers on and off for, that we'd get a nice deal in a small theatre for the following summer in Edinburgh. And she said yes. And I thought, well, you know what? I'm going to be bold. I'm going to approach all the artistic directors of all the theatres in the city and say, if we get down to like 10 scripts, will you guarantee to read those, come together in a room and make a decision on which play goes up to Edinburgh? All of them said yes. So did someone from Granada TV, so did someone from BBC Radio. And that's what I mean about kind of being bold and just going, yeah, why not? So we did that. They all came together, and the thing that they said was, one of the reasons was, yes, to find this new writing, to find this new talent, to see all of that, to see what's out there. But a big bit was we never actually get to meet, and we never actually get to talk, and it brought us together. So they then all signed up to do it again the following year. And it just worked really well in terms of setting that model up. So I'd set all of that up. I'd been bold, I'd been brave, I'd been brassy, and then I got cold feet. And basically I was like, I don't know what to do. Probably, as some of you might be right now. I don't know what to do in this step now. I'd love to go down that route, but I just don't have the means. I don't know how to make that next step. I trained as a youth theatre director, out of love, not of necessity, at Contact Theatre in Manchester. And that again was a really important moment, because then years later when I moved back to Manchester, having moved away for a bit, a lot of people were in the same place. And people, you get a reputation for the way you are with people, for how much you'll give, for how much you will contribute to the greater good rather than just your own journey. And when people know that, they give it back. So at that moment, I didn't quite know what to do. And I spoke to Sarah Frankham. At the Royal Exchange, and she said, I might have some work for you, but I might not, and I don't know which way it'll go. And I said, well, I'm thinking about applying for a teacher training course down in London, because I feel like I've seen other people who have been part of the city and been really active, but then have never stepped outside of that student world, that safe world around it. They've kind of clung on because that's where the safety is. And I feel like if I'm not going to go into this space where we are at the minute, I need to have a change, and I'll probably come back, but I just need a change. So I went and applied, and she said, you know what, do it. And her words were, I trained as a teacher, and it improved my communication, my knowledge of the world, and of people, and it's made me a better director and a better person. So I was like, and she said, and if you're partway through, if this job comes through, I'll get on the phone, you can always come and do it. So I went away, and it did all of those things for me. And I loved it. And I taught for 3 years down in London. And I was at a point, this is where being brave comes back into play. I was at a point where you're in an inner city, so there's a big wastage of people. If you're working hard, if you're driven, if you're committed to change, if you are committed to young people, the promotions follow very quickly. So within 3 years I was being offered to be head of year, and that would have put me on a salary level that I'd have been too scared to walk away from. And so I thought, you know what, if I'm gonna try what I wanted to do in the first place, it's now or never. So I resigned without having anything to go to, and that was in the February. And then in like the March, I got a job back up in Bolton on the edge of Manchester as the youth theatre director. Within 6 months, the associate director was leaving, so everyone knew, and I didn't get the job I went for. They created another one. But we all moved up one within 6 months, and then within a year I was head of education and youth theatre. But I halved my salary to what it would have been to have been that head of year, and it was then or not at all. So I was brave in that instance. We then did amazing things for 3 years at the Octagon. Collectively, we made some great work, really deep work, challenging new relationships, properly steeped in our community. But I was starting to get offers of directing independent work. And again, it was a case of, in order to do that, I'm going to have to be brave. So again, something about February, birthdays as well, that's probably something to do with it. 22nd, if you're wondering if you want to give me a card. But again, it was basically, right, I'm going to go for it. There's these offers on the table. I've got about 6 months of freelance work lined up that I could put into place. I'm going to go for it. So I then was a freelance director, producer, workshop leader, project manager for about 5 years, successfully in Manchester, across the Northwest, and then a little bit in the Midlands. Through all of this time, I've been working in Edinburgh. I've never lost that love affair. And through that time, while I was getting paid well for certain bits of work, I was also doing certain work for free because it was the right work, either to progress my career and my skills and my knowledge, or because it just needed to happen, and it was the right thing to do. And then in 2010, I had the opportunity to run my first venue, which was launching a brand new venue in Northamptonshire called the Core at Corby Cube. And that venue was about young people, new work, communities, social change, but brand new Arts Council funded organisation. At the end of that period of time, things go in cycles. This is where brave was possibly on the borders of foolish, but I still believe brave. There was always a gamble in that moment of where to go next, and I came over here and ran the old rep for 2 years, kind of relaunched that around, as many people in this room have had some kind of connection with a real drive again that it needed to open the doors. It needed to be a space that anyone could feel they could come and be creative, that it needed to be about wider progression journeys. And then at the end of the 2 years that I spent there, it became apparent that I wanted to go in one direction and the parent group wanted to go in another. Wasn't easy, wasn't nice, but it was the right thing for us to part our ways at that moment. And then from that moment, again, one thing leads to another. I would not be doing what I'm doing now had I not been in this city for 2 years doing all the great work collaboratively that we've done. As I left, the opportunity came up to do freelance work with Dance Hub, the launch of Dance Hub alongside the new director, Monique Delaton, and again looking at about independent artist work, pathways, commissions, new work, and to go and work with Fiona Allen on a freelance basis at the Hippodrome to help shape the new direction again about creativity and putting more of an artistic, producing heart into that organisation. And then that's all led to the point where there is a 15-month need, at least, for someone to be in the role that I'm in now, which is a new role around cementing those factors, those areas that are about expanding the audiences, making the venue feel open, working with artists locally, nationally, beyond, to make exciting new work that speaks to our city and to really open the doors of that venue. So, believe it or not, that was the short version, I'm sorry. But it's that sense of one thing to another, being brave, jumping off, and sometimes that thing that you don't know, it felt like a diversion, was actually absolutely what's prepared me in so many ways for what I've had to do since.
Any questions?
It's just about what you've just said. What, on a practical level, keeps you brave, or where do you find your resilience or your bravery when you're kind of losing the will to?
Sometimes out of necessity, I think. Sometimes about feeling that you're a point. It's about your drive. It's about your personal drive. Why do you do what you do? And sometimes that can come back and bite you on the bum and leave you out on your ear, you know. But actually, if you have acted honestly, collaboratively and supportively, genuinely together to try and improve the greater good, there will always be things that come and pick you up. There'll always be someone who says, don't worry about that, there will be somewhere to go there. but you kind of need that group of people around you. And by your actions, by being generous, by being collaborative, by working as part of a bigger picture, you build a support structure that then gives you that support when you need it, when there is a little dip, or when you're unsure. And sometimes it is, you know, it's scary, but sometimes it's your heart. What am I setting out to do? What's my drive? I've got to listen to that. Does that answer?
Yeah, it does. Because it's important to know what drives you,
Yeah.
so that you can go back to it and you start questioning whether you're doing the right thing.
Absolutely. And sometimes you have to decide, all right, in 6 months I'm going to be, I need to leave that.
Sure.
And I have to, in reality, get through this next 6 months financially, in whatever way that is, to enable me to do that. But I know that right now, I'm being brave and making the decision that in 6 months I have to be somewhere else.
It's about not getting comfortable as well. I think sometimes as an artist you can get stuck in an organisation that you're just, it's paying the bills, it's an easy journey to work, I'm just going to sit here and ride it out and carry on doing that same thing that I've been doing. Sometimes you just need to go, do I really still want to do this? And sometimes it's a perfect job for you and you do fit and you stay there for donkey's years and it's great and you've got a great team around you and you can control that team. But I think sometimes when you're not in control of the people that you're working with and you're not enjoying what you're doing anymore, it's time to go and let somebody else who will enjoy it more come and do it.
I'd say as well, if whatever work you do outside of filmmaking, acting, whatever, because we have to work, we have to make money, try and find something that's creative. It might not be anything to do like my job, but I'm not acting as a photographer. I'm a newborn and baby photographer, but now I've recently got into actors headshots, so again I'm around actors all the time, which again, you know, if I see the passion in them, most of them end up being in something that I'm doing. So I think that keeps you going as well, because I've been in jobs where I've worked for probation, worked for the courts, and it made me, I'm not a down person, very positive, but when you're doing a job that you don't like, sitting in front of a screen that's nothing to do with being creative or getting your juices flowing, you just deflate you and demotivate you and doesn't push you. But you might do the opposite and make you think, no, I'm getting out of this job. But if you're already down, sometimes it's hard to come out of that. So find something that is just as creative or just as fun.
Okay. If we was to look at hiring new graduates, what do you think is to look for, in your opinion? Good answer to all. What would you say is the right thing to look for?
I would just say passion, really. Definitely passion, because it's not even just graduates. I work on sets where actors don't turn up and they've been acting for years. Who do you think you are to just not turn up to work? Like paid jobs, and there could have been someone else that could have filled these, and like too short notice to get these actors in. So if you're passionate and you've got the drive, that's what motivates me to want to work with people. People that are on the same level as me, that want to push and want to do bigger things. Even if it's little now, it will lead to bigger things, and that's what motivates me, passion.
I think people that are happy to muck in and be part of a team and not always be the most important person in the room, but can do little bits of stuff as well and will be helpful and help out and get on with stuff. You know, if I'm going to get in, I'll wear manky old dungarees and I'll be painting. I'm not standing there saying you do this and you do that and you do the other, and I want other people around me that are going to work in that same way. That when it's tough, you know, when you have got a deadline to reach, when you're setting up for an event or when you're getting ready for something, everybody's putting the chairs out and getting everything done. Because a lot of the world of theatre, whatever it is, whatever events you're running, whatever creative business you're in, you need people that are just going to know when the pressure's on and be able to work damn hard when it comes, and not sort of go, I don't think that's my job, or and understand that it's about a company working all together, because otherwise it's just not going to happen.
Yeah, I'd agree with that, and a little bit about what Chris was saying about kind of making the tea or whatever. Like, actually, that isn't necessarily kind of below you. It just shows that you're part of that whole chain. Like, you've got to sometimes be at the bottom or serve some of the people that are really busy. You know, the way that I came through it as well was that I was trying to preempt what the person who I was working for needed. And therefore, you know, putting the chairs out, if that needs to be done, you know, I'll still do it now, whatever my role is. And I think that I'd be looking for people that are kind of intuitive to that, really. That, you know, because progressively, I don't know how it happens, but the more that you carry on working on things, the more that it seems like you're sort of swimming in it, you know, the responsibilities get more each time, and so you're looking for someone that sort of understands that for you and can kind of take that on. Therefore, I'm usually looking for people that are, you know, like, it's an oldie but a really important one as well, with the particular kind of sponsorship and working with organisations. I'm looking for people who are well presented, that can speak well, that, you know, can articulate their own ideas or empathise. That's like a really big thing, but fundamentally kind of be organised and intuitive to what might need to be done. It, you know, we'll tell you no if it doesn't need to happen, like, but sometimes I actually want someone to surprise me and be like, actually no, I've already done that for you, and you know, here it is, and what do you think, kind of thing, and that goes back to being kind of brave again as well.
And have your own opinions, yeah. I don't want someone who just agrees with me every single second of the day. You know, it's, you know, the time when to say yes and no and I'll do it now, but also come with your own ideas and come with a fresh look at things. You know, I can do loads of different jobs myself. The reason I'm employing somebody else is to bring new ideas into the room. If they're just going yes to me, that's not helping us to move forward with something. So people that are willing to, when you ask them a question, not go, oh, of course, yeah, but actually will bring some ideas.
Questions on that one? If going on to like maybe CVs, because they're on a, maybe you all agree, like they are the dreaded ones. What if I was to pass you my CV, or anyone was to pass you, what would you look for there? Because you can do it in person. You can be that person in front of what you look on this.
I've received CVs from people on the applied performance course, and I think you undersell yourselves massively because you don't break down all the things that you've done. You just assume that people know applied performance course, and like everyone's going to know what that is. You need to go, this is where I've been placed. I did these placements with these people for this amount of time. I worked hard on this project. I was an actor in this. I was a director in this. I ran these workshops in this. And really flesh out all of that experience that you've got. Almost forget that it was on the course and you didn't get paid for it, but actually spell it out. I had a placement with this person, I did this, I did this, I did this, I did this. Because on my CV it says volunteered and did one-off sessions with. It doesn't tell you which ones I volunteered for and which ones I got paid for, because it doesn't matter, because I was a person in that room doing that thing that was really important. And just to break down every single thing that you've done, whether it was a workshop that you went for that was free, whether it was whether you even went to your local gym and did a course of yoga, you know, it doesn't matter whether you've paid for it or it's paid for you. Spell it out what you've done, what experience you've actually had.
There's a point of overselling yourself.
Well, it's not about overselling yourself, it's about overselling the things that you have actually done. I don't want you to say, I'm beautiful and wonderful and I'm ever so kind and I'm blah, 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 blah. But if the factual things that you have done and achieved.
I think that's interesting, because I think it might be interesting to see if we all have different takes on it. I really don't care about that little paragraph about I'm this kind of person, I'm a, you know, kaleidoscope thinker, or I don't care about that. I care about, and this comes a bit back to the volunteering thing as well, like sometimes you get a sense of someone who's just done what they were told to do or had to do, and sometimes you get a sense of people who is really clear on whatever basis have gone above and beyond, and you just, it sings off the page. I think it's also, I mean, depending on, it's also having the confidence, depending what you're going for. If it's a full-time job, it's one thing. If it's a freelance gig, it's having the confidence, yes, going at the right level of who you ask it to, but having the confidence to say, I've done this, here's my CV, I'd love to meet for coffee if you had time, you know? And actually not being afraid to be a bit pushy with that. I wouldn't, when I was starting out, I probably wouldn't do that to the CEO of somewhere, but looking for that next step and that direct person, there's nothing wrong with saying that, because we can always go, I'm really sorry, I haven't got time at the moment, but, you know, thank you for doing this, or whatever. And that's also worth remembering. Sometimes that doesn't mean I'll put it on file and it's forgotten about forever. Sometimes it does mean I'll put it on file and I'll store it in here and I'll come back to it when I have a need for that. It does genuinely mean that sometimes, and you only get to know that when you get to know the person. Some people it's one thing, some people it's the other. I think it's you that comes off the CV, which I know sounds like it's the opposite from what I said with that little opening paragraph, but what you do tells me about who you are a little bit in the way that you've approached
I think you guys it's kind of covered.
That's all right. Any questions towards that?
It doesn't go away. I mean, like,
No.
I'm still writing my CV at the moment,
Yeah.
and like, you know, didn't get something this week, and you know, it's unfortunately like there's no sort of easy kind of answer with it. Even with connections, sometimes just you know, you're brave and something doesn't come back, or your face doesn't fit, or like you know, you're not the right person for that kind of thing. So
That last comment's really important. Two things, because again, like in this period where I've been doing the freelancing, there was something I went for, and actually, if I was being really true to my heart, it wasn't really what I wanted. And the person who was appointing it, I actually knew, and kind of knew that, but it was a necessity thing, yeah? So there is that thing about it being the right thing, and it wasn't the right thing. But the other bit of that, my wife used to work in casting, and her line always was to people, particularly if you're doing adverts, if you're doing those kind of things, there's no point going in and pretending to be something you're not, because actually if you go in and you are the best of you, and that is what that brief is, then it will follow. If you go in and you are the best of you and it is not what they're looking for, that's because that's not what they're looking for. That's not because it's you. You know, it's basically that fit thing. And the last thing today, a choreographer said to me pretty much the same thing. He's done feedback for an audition really recently, and he took the time to give feedback, and he basically said to people as part of that, I saw you today, I didn't see you yesterday, I didn't see you the day after, I didn't see you for 8 weeks. I saw you in a room for that moment looking for this specific thing, and in that lens it wasn't the right thing, but I do want to keep in touch with you. So I think it's, you know, people will have different degrees of ways they approach it, but sometimes it isn't just the right thing.
Just to say as well, in the funding climate at the moment, I've seen jobs come up, be advertised and taken away again. I've applied for 2 jobs where the funding's been cut before the position's been appointed to, or they've amalgamated it into somebody else's role because they just couldn't fund the number of hours that they put the advert out for. This happened at the Rep really recently. Is they put out a job, loads of people applied for it, and then they realised that actually they could just squash it into somebody else's job and make it like 10 more hours for that one person that they already had, rather than make it a full another job and have a full other person there. And there's a lot of that going on. You know, I do think there's a problem with this full-time hours. You know, everybody's expected to have these jobs that just fit very nicely and neatly into 37.5 hours. We might not have that much work to do. People are a bit afraid of employing freelancers or employing people, you know, on a contract basis. They'd rather have their people that are fixed and know what they're coming into. So there's some organisations that are just much more clued up into employing people on a freelance basis, and some people that are really scared of doing that, and want people in their building every day and that know what they're doing. So yeah, it's about knowing what kind of jobs you're going for, and at the moment funding is so up and down. I've started 2 jobs and funding been cut part way through, and they've had to carry on employing me because I'm on a contract, but I've had to do completely different work for them and try and make it still fit what they've done. Funding is really, really erratic, and it is affecting the way that people are employed massively.
So you talk about funding, how, like, obviously that's somewhere where you see, oh, that's been cut off, and then it's going to be, oh, is the next job going to be cut? How do you think that's affecting people in the creative industry, for all of you? What ones?
Well, yeah, people, the sort of longer term funded programmes are the holy grail. It's really quite stressful working on a kind of project by project basis, which is something that I've had to do in the past, but I don't think that, I think you all need to be aware of that as a reality. You know, and I think, you know, there's a lot of kind of future gazing around the kind of modern workplace and requirements that will eventually see, you know, shifts somewhere between the gig economy and freelance and full-time work. There will be, I think, more of that, and organisations will be more prepared to employ people on a contract basis, because I think it'll suit both the employer and the employee. But I think it's about what you were saying as well. I mean, that's a perfect kind of journey point where you've gone into one thing, filmmaking, but then passion's taken to photography and then you've managed to convert that into a paid role because you're actually interacting with those people. I think what you don't learn off a textbook in school, college or university is that skill to learn about how you innovate and transfer those kind of opportunities, and you only really get that from experience and talking to people and trying to understand why other people might be making that decision. I am sure that the people that employed you didn't want that to kind of happen, but everyone needs, you sort of need to learn that intuition or be, or come with a kind of flexible kind of approach and attitude, because I think it then goes back to the, well, one thing leads to another. But yeah, you've got to grow a bit of a thick skin with some of these sort of setbacks, or with the challenges. You know, I do think what we've all sort of said is try and get in there in the first instance, but it's not always smooth sailing. Kind of after that, you know, there is work's called work for a reason.
I think with funding, it's about knowing how far in advance to work for it. So you've got to prepare for your next gig while you're still doing your current gig. There's no waiting around with it. So now to get funding, you'll probably get turned down, and then get the funding like on a third stroke. So you've got to kind of be that many steps ahead of knowing where you're going next, and understanding who else is getting the funding and why they're getting the funding. What is it about those organisations, and keep a track of that. Where is the money going? And so what are they doing really, really well? They're not to copy them, but to kind of look at, okay, so they're doing more outreach stuff, or they're reaching a wider community, or they're attracting new audiences, or they're in that certain location, and how can I emulate that in my part of the city or in my specialty, so that you're understanding what the funders are still able to give money to, and what the funders are still interested in, and because the pressure is on them, you know, to do that, and understand the waves of loads of people have just been given a lot of money, so I've got to kind of keep a lid on it for a bit before I then try and pitch for my applications, because if I go in now just after loads of people have been awarded Arts Council funding, there's not going to be any money there. Actually understanding the economics of it, like where is the money and who's doing what with it, or finding jobs with the people that did get the money.
And it's also, you know, in a way the same with earning the money or market of it as well.
Yeah.
Who's it for? Is there a demand? Is there a market? And am I the person to create that for that market? If not, what can I create? What can I generate that can find a market?
And I do think it's a shame that so many arts organisations have to be funded, like that people aren't willing to pay for art as much anymore. Like everybody expects art to kind of be free nowadays, and for some public person to fund it. And I think if everybody just paid a little bit, if they could, you know, just tried to drive that economy a little bit more and pay into it, rather than schools expecting free tickets to see every show they go to see because it's a community piece, or it's not going to be on the Hippodrome stage, or, you know, in a professional venue, that they therefore shouldn't have to pay for it. If there could be some revenue coming in a smaller way from those places that do have some money to pay with, and people valued art. You know, if you go to see a piece of TIE, then it's going to educate your kids, and you should be putting some money back into it rather than waiting for somebody to fund it. And then, you know, there should be the budgets in the schools as well, so the schools could fund you rather than having to just look for big funders to fund projects.
I think you were here for the other AppChat. We're talking about the actor, the AP, the marketer. How important do you think it is to collaborate with each other, especially events here today? We're talking. How important do you think these are, especially for young people, or even for anyone?
What the importance of collaboration is at the centre of everything. You know, and even in a very, very traditional model, it's at the centre of everything. You cannot do it alone, and it's very mono-directional. There's not that vibrancy to the work unless there are collaborative voices in it. But again, it's back to that thing of the realities of life. It is arts and it is business. It's an arts business, and actually the ability of putting all of that together, you have to think about the money. You have to think, always start with your audience. If it's something that you're making, who's it for? You know, it might be for yourself, but if it's for yourself, then no one might pay for it, you know, and that's fine, as long as you know that. But always thinking, who's this for? Where's it going to be seen? How's it going to play out there? You know, alongside the what is the expression that I have that I need to put out into the world? It's making those work together, really.
Brilliant. Any questions? Yeah.
Have you got any questions for us in creatives and people starting out?
Possibly, like, what's the biggest challenge you feel you face at this moment? Or what's a challenge? Because the biggest you might think if I say that, whatever. But what's one of the big challenges you face?
I guess it's competition, like, because we're new, like, there's so many people out there that's probably got a lot more experience, and so obviously if you're going up against them, it's kind of finding, like, your unique selling point, or, like, what's out there that's kind of higher for demand. So, like, when I work with 20 Stories, they were saying, like, they find, like, puppeteers is kind of, I'm speaking to a puppeteer that they work with from Scotland, and she was saying, like, she was an actor, and obviously there was a high demand for puppeteers, so she just got in contact with someone, and now she's getting a lot more work doing puppetry because a lot more people are using it, and there's a lot less people out there with that kind of skill that can do it just as good. But I think it's the whole challenge, isn't it? Like, how you differ yourself to other people, and obviously if they've got more experience, it's like, what else can you offer? And if it's obviously you can do more skills like puppetry or visual stuff or sound editing, that might be kind of the way in. But I don't know.
Yeah, but it's also, yeah, and it is what you can offer. Actually, it's the biggest thing is you. And I think the thing about, you're saying about that new thing, in a way, it's easier to be the first wave of new than the second wave of new. It's like the second album thing, you know, with music, you know, it's like that first announcement of yourself is an easier step than the next one on from that, because you know, it doesn't feel that way, but people haven't seen your face before. So actually there is that first impression, that first moment. And there is an excitement of the new, which often, particularly in the arts, people are obsessed by and not necessarily thinking about the next step. So use that to your advantage.
I think this event has a really great title of Graduates Unleashed, because I think it's like, here we come, watch out. And I think that's a really exciting thing to be part of, really. Because I think Unleashed is a really great... there's a poem called Everybody Sang, which is a poem about the end of war and what people did afterwards, about how people kind of recovered from war ended and everybody cheered, but then what did they do? Because their lives had changed so much going back to it. And I think that's similar to finishing university, is that something massive has finished, but it's that expectation of what we do next. And there's a lovely line in it about birds, just as if they're prison birds being released from cages and flittering off in all different directions and wildly scattering across the sky. And I think that's the same. You've all been in this really tight bubble where you feel like competition is all around you because you're all part of that same course. But actually, if you all don't apply for the same job first and you all kind of shoot off in different directions about your different passions, and you identify now what your differences are with the other people on your course and what the different things you could apply for, I think it's then really exciting that you can go off in these different directions and then meet back up and talk about it and then go off again, and oh, I really like working for these people and they've got an opportunity coming up that would suit you, and find out what's different about you from the other people on your course, and then try and track different journeys. If you all step out and all go for the same job, then it's going to be big competition. But yeah, try and track a different path to others.
Yeah, I think as a creative, we do have our days where we do look at what other people are doing and think, oh my God, they're doing so well and I'm stuck here. And but if you focus on yourself, like you said, this lady went out there, she went and got, she started doing the skills of it because she's seen there was a niche for it and that there was not many people doing it. Work on yourself all the time, you tend to not notice what people are doing around you. So years ago, I wished I had went into stage combat years ago. I'm just doing that now. Like, I've just done my level 1, like I've got to do another 2 levels. Like, I wish I'd done loads of things years ago so I could have all them skills now, but obviously you're never too old to learn. But once you focus on yourself and building yourself up as, I've got this skill, and you're a brand at the end of the day. You're a brand yourself, going out there as an individual. You have to build yourself up. You have to, like I said, you have to want people to come knocking on your door. You know, you have to start building yourself up. You build your back up of different armours, different skills. Just making yourself grow, basically, as an artist, as a creative.
Yeah, it doesn't finish when you leave.
No.
Really, no.
Just going back to Grace's question, saying what's the question, Chris's question, sorry. I mean, just to carry that on, what are other people's challenges or what are things that people want to be doing?
Mine's scattered passion. So I love like singing, dancing, acting, costume design, writing poetry, novel writing. It's just, I feel like there's so much going on creatively that I can't like refine or cultivate something to then actually make a profit from.
My advice would probably be pick one that you're going to really put loads of energy into first, knowing that you're going to look at the rest again, but still take those other opportunities to go and do that experience in whatever level you can. Find out what projects are out there, and actually know the one that you're going to commit to for the next however long, and then also look at, there's an opportunity coming in 6 months, I'm going to do that one. You might not finish this one by the time you get there, but that's fine, you can come back to that afterwards because you've already lined that one up, which is something else. You can be more than one thing.
I'd find one that's really exciting to do as a hobby, like if there's, especially with things like poetry and music, there's a lot of kind of nights out and kind of social life around that, whereas novel writing isn't social. It's kind of a thing you do on your own, and I was talking to somebody earlier about at what point do you try and make the money from it. So, like, I have ideas for plays. Do I ask for the money now that I've got an idea? Do I write it and then ask for money? Do I direct it and then ask for money to put it on? At what point do you then ask other people to start giving you the money? And you've got to kind of weigh that up. Have you got enough stuff at the moment that somebody's going to pay for or fund you to do? And if not, you need to kind of work out what it is that you've got and what it is, a product that you can then sell on to other people.
I'd probably say, I talked about doing things for free earlier on, and probably two of the things that kicked me on to the next chapter were both things I did for free. So one was a show in a bar on Canal Street in Manchester that was called Three Gobby Cows, and it was 3 women had written this piece, and they were standalone monologues at the minute, and then we came up with a concept of how it could all sit within a studio space and be like basically taking a cabaret bar, so not using the stage space, not using that formal divide, and that was the first show that I got to direct as a professional at Contact. I say as a professional, with professionals, it was free. I wasn't paid to do that, but we were an entirely professional team. And Contact in Manchester, if you don't know, is a really brilliant young people-driven theatre, an arts venue. But from that, I then ended up becoming part of their regular team, directing their paid gigs for script nights, then got a couple of bigger projects, then through that got recommended by the artistic director for a really massive national project. But it was because he saw something I did for free in a bar on Canal Street. Second one, 5 years later, there was a show again that I did for free in a new writing festival alongside other stuff that I was doing and getting paid for. I just knew it was a brilliant play, and I knew that I wanted to do it. I didn't want anyone else having the chance to direct that because it was brilliant. And it was a writer who was a first-time writer who had directed in a paid gig just as an actor. And so we got to know, and he asked me to look at it, and I said, Luke, I don't want you talking to anyone else about this. I want to direct this. He said, I've not got any money. I said, I don't care. I want to direct this, and we're going to get it in that festival. And it won 2 awards and then got staged at the Library Theatre. But again, it was something we all did for free. And from that, everyone in it then got lots more work because it was shown in the right place. And it was the right piece of work that we all needed to make at that time. So, and it isn't, again, the thing about when you choose to get paid or when you push for not doing, someone who's like, they were 21 at the time, similar time as you, and they'd been advised by someone, oh, you shouldn't, no way should you go and do anything for less than 250 quid a day. And I just said, you're not. Do that if you want, but you'll work for probably about 10 days a year. You know, or use your brilliant creativity, get your stuff out there, make your choice. You know, if that's what you've got to do, that's what you've got to do. But if I was you, and I gave them those 2 examples I've just given them, and that person has then gone on and been much more successful than the person who said that to them because they'd had that breakthrough where they were getting paid 250 quid a day and then refusing to work for any less. And that person then had 2 years of almost no work and then revisited their standpoint and has since built themselves back up. It's not hard and fast rules. You're constantly making decisions of what feels right and what feels like it grows you. Back to the puppetry, back to that moment, and your connections and your profile. And sometimes it's just something that you desperately want to create as a creative person. And so yeah, keep playing.
Going back of what you said, I'm in quite a few groups, and if you're on, there's loads of groups on Facebook, like actors and filmmakers, actors at Midlands, all these groups, and there's so many people in there. I want to come out of them sometimes because they're in there arguing, why are you doing this for free? Why are you promoting things for free? Why are you saying it's not a paid job? Because sometimes you need your experience. There are people out there that have got nothing, so you need that. I still do things for free, even much I get more paid work than. But if I see something that I think I want to do that because that looks interesting, I will do it. And I've done things for free. And off the back of that, so I did someone's show reel the other day for them. Someone must have let them down. I didn't know them, but I seen them was urgent. They put it on one of these groups. So I messaged her and I said, I'll do that for you, honey. And she was like, really? I was like, yeah. She was like, you're not going to let me down, are you? And I was like, no. She was like, it's tomorrow. I'm like, okay. She's like, are you going to show up? I was like, stop panicking. I said, I'm going to do it. I'm not going to let you down. So I went, and I didn't know it was paid or anything. She gave me 50 quid just for coming. My travel expenses was 20 minutes down the road, but she gave me 50 quid. I was like, I don't want it. She gave me 50 quid. I took it. You know, I've got a kid. I've got nappies to buy. And so from the back of that, she really enjoyed my acting, and I got a part in her feature film that they were doing. I didn't know they were doing a feature film. I got a part in their feature film. Like last minute, they wrote me in, they wrote me a part in because she was like, I can't believe how reliable you was. Your acting was brilliant. I didn't expect you to be so good, even though I was at my show reel, so how dare she? And but you never know what's going to come from something. And for another example, my first film, the one that's in film festivals, it got selected to be in a film festival called Buff Film Festival, which is quite a big one in London now. And so that was in September. It was shown, the awards and everything. So this year they've started doing films themselves. They've started, as they're a husband and wife, they've started doing their own films. So they've just started doing a feature film. They've just shot it in London. I was going down there as an actor and a stills photographer, but the writer and director, she was in it as well. So they were like, who's going to direct? And I was like, well, Tanisha directs. Obviously they've seen my film. And I was like, oh, we don't put her under pressure like this. So I ended up being the actor, the photographer and director, just from doing things and putting yourself out there. And I didn't expect to be that, but now I've got a credit on a feature film this year that I didn't expect to be doing, because you just don't know. So put yourself out there, because yeah, you might think, oh God, it's only 20 quid or it's free, but you don't know who you're going to be around. You don't know who's doing things and who you're going to meet on that set, or who's going to blow up in the next year and think, I remember that person because they came to me, they never let me down and they didn't get paid, but the person who was getting paid moaned all the way through set. So you're never too big for your boots. You never know when you're going to go back down again, so remember that.
Yeah, always be positive.
Particularly a question for you, Tanisha. I don't know if you've seen Actors UK, where people upload their headshots, and then you get social media, you get all this backlash of people saying it's not the right one. You shouldn't be putting that up there. You shouldn't be sending out. How does that affect you? Because you're in photography. How do you feel that's?
My work or
anyone's work, because people like anyone who's an actor or anyone can freely put their headshot up there, and then you've got people giving opinions because now social media is big.
Yeah.
How do you think that affects a person's confidence for getting in the industry?
Well, lately I have seen quite a few headshots go up, and people asking. Some people's pictures you can tell they've been done on the phone, so and obviously. A lot of people have got money to get in headshots, so not a lot of actors are broke. But at the same time, I do hate some people's comments, the way they're like, do not put that up, who took this, oh, come to my house and I'll do it better on my phone. I think that's not nice, because obviously they've got no money, they're trying their best to get out there, And a lot of these people don't live in my in this area. A lot of them are from London, Manchester. I feel like saying, jump on the train, I'll do your headshots for you.
Yeah.
Because people should be putting them down. Actors already feel low sometimes. So to be mocking them and saying, oh no, who told you to put that up? You're never going to get a job like. And I just think, have some heart. Just because you're probably being paid or you've got a decent headshots, don't be knocking them. In fact, steer them in the right direction to people that are quite cheap. Or, do you know what I mean? Like I said, if they was in Birmingham, I would say, come to me and I'll do your headshots for you.
So do you think there is a part in the industry where actors are putting up for actors are? Because of the
Yeah,
way?
I do.
Yeah.
I do. Like I said, I'm in all these groups and I do look in there and I think I need to come out of this group because there's so many negative people in here want to jump on people's backs and knock them down when really we should be helping each other. We're all actors, we're all creatives, like, and you probably was in the same boat years ago because now this is what happens. People forget where they come from and they get too big for the boots. And I hope no matter what happens in my life, no matter how big I get or whatever, I stay how I am because it's important. Because people remember you and how you are. And a lot of people, like with my job, so my last my last film had 15 cast members and the main actors, the ones I had all day, got a daily rate, but my not extras, my smaller leads, they all got paid probably about £30, but they all got headshots. My headshots are worth £85. They all got headshots. Like they're all coming to me anyway, but that saved them money coming to me. So they got £125 worth out of me. Do you know what I mean? At the end of the day, and so I put a post of a day for a script reading, and again 15 cast members, and they all applied to come back, and that shows a lot that they want to come work with me again because of how I am as a person, and because you've got to treat everyone with respect. I've been an extra for years, like doing extra jobs, and the one acting job that stood out for me, I worked on Shameless. And so I was in 3 roles, only small roles, but Frank, if you know Shameless, Frank was the director on the day, so he was actor 1 minute and director the next, and he came in to us all and would sit down and go, sorry guys, we're running late, and are you all okay? I will never forget Frank. I will never forget him because he is probably one of the only directors who remembered the little people. And I'll never forget how he cared about how we was, not just all the other actors that were out there that have been on his show forever.
Because he's remembered.
And I always remember him, and that's how I kind of want to be. I want to treat everybody the same because I've been in that boat. Just because I'm sitting here now, I might be on a set one day where I'm again only a small lead, and I could be. Do you know what I mean? Like you've got to remember that everybody's human, and you've got to treat everybody with respect. I'm going to cry now. Emotional.
Right. Also, another question: how do you think politics is affecting the future? That's a wide question of the creative professionals.
I think there's a lot of grading within politics. I think I think there's a lot of political issues around. There's like politics that affects how much money comes to people. But then there's politics which affects the way that we feel about ourselves, and I do think that the more kind of political anguish there is, the better creativity there is. I think the more that people are feeling a struggle, the more interesting the work that they're creating. And what often happens is that we have this sort of period of unrest, of political unrest, and some great work is thought about, but there's no money to produce it, so people try even harder to produce that work, and the work that breaks through is then really, really exceptional, and the work that gets produced in times of adversity and when there's the struggle is on is often really, 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 really powerful work. You talked about the Night Less Ordinary scheme which came in, and I think that really opened doors to people and was hugely helpful in showing a whole generation of people a lot more professional theatre and a lot more sort of really good quality theatre. And then it helped to drive people's kind of creative exposure and then go away and look at their own lives and create theatre from that. So I think you kind of need that switch up. I think change is a good thing. I don't think if we all stayed in a very good economic time and a stable, then creativity wouldn't be as abundant. But by switching it up and changing it, so we get these periods of of money and no money and creativity and no you know, you get kind of a good mix of work being produced. Not that it's nice for you as a person, you don't want to feel angsty enough to have to write this sort of charged work, but it does stir things up in people.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's, I said it in an event once before really, that it's certainly not what any of us want to find ourselves in that situation. But I think sometimes it, you know, in addition to those of us who believe in collaboration, sometimes it forces some people who don't to have to collaborate and have to change the way. Quite often, actually, it's the bigger institutions that have to change the way they work, because the people who are used to working on the margins and used to working collaboratively are used to finding new solutions. So actually, it's those who have become comfortable in a particular way of working that it is harder to adapt to that change. But I think it can often be that hotbed of collaboration as well as creativity. So while it's not to be desired, I'd echo what you said.
Yeah, coming from a place where we didn't get big funds, we didn't get the Arts Council funding, we didn't necessarily get big lottery funding, big grants, we were scavenging out skips to make theatre a lot of the time. That kind of make, do, amend kind of theatre that I was part of creating, even in times of when other people were getting money, definitely helped to be of benefit when other people lost out on money. My ability to manage a budget in a really tight situation.
But I guess the bit that then falls out, that then does become a problem, is the bit of those change programmes, like A Night Less Ordinary, like usually any kind of access programme that opens the doors. Those things are the things that go, and you can then translate that right across outside of the arts to things. You know, the biggest loss, whatever I may believe about the arts and loads of other things, but the biggest loss in my eyes really around kind of the change in austerity was around Sure Start centres, and actually that sense of that support for the families who needed it most. Because I know that when, you know, when my daughter was one and I was freelance, that actually that support structure of having that access to things was what made things possible. And I think that's the big fear, is those access programs. We can all be creative and resilient, but it's about how we then continue to believe and continue to act in a way, and those who can step up to make sure that those pathways are open. I'm not going to go on a big pitch, but that's one of the exciting things for me. Years ago, I never would have imagined myself working at the Hippodrome. It's not necessarily a natural fit for my journey to where I am now, but Fiona, the CEO at the Hippodrome, absolutely, for good decisions and bad decisions that she'll make through lots of things, her thing is we cannot lose that and we have to prioritise that. And so that's why I'm even there. But I think it's those things of going, those who can, then, if the right person is in place, can then challenge others to try and open that up. And I think that's when those people need to step up too.
Brilliant. We're going to tie it up there. If you could give one last thing, one piece of advice for any young creatives or everyone here today, what would it be, each from all of you? Just short.
So first of all, definitely produce your own work. Learn how to navigate that Arts Council funding. I understand there may not be enough money involved in it, but just go for it, because you're going to get, as you're saying, you're going to get turned down 3 or 4 times. So learn to fill it out 3 or 4 times. You know, try to just. Also, we talk about harsh environments, which I think creatively is the best thing, because it's going to force you to think outside the box. It's going to force you to write to businesses to get sponsorships, to do something like that, to do something you've never done, and more important, collaborate. I've set companies where I'm collaborating with actors and collaborating directly with my competition, but we're still creating amazing work because we are open-minded about it.
Just go and do it. Just go and do it. That's the best advice I can give you. Get up. Don't sit there. Don't hold. Only you can hold yourself back. Can you? Like you said, you sit there and you think, I get cold feet. I don't want to do it. I'm too scared. Is it going to work? You won't know until you do it. Get up and do it. That's it. That's all I can say to you. Do whatever's in your mind. Get it out of your mind. Get it out wherever you need to put it. Stage, screen, on paper. Get it out. Get out your head. Get out and do it.
I'd say stick to your guns, but be flexible. So know what it morally is good for you to do, but also accept things that will earn you money, and you know have values about what you really, really want to do, but then know that you can't do that 100% of the time.
Get in rooms, see work, volunteer.
Be true, be brave, be generous.
There we go, let's give a round of applause for you. And that rounds up your Creative Ignition Today book. There is one tomorrow at 11 a.m, so don't go away. And also your next app chat is Prison and Theatre in Crime, and that'll be at the Conservatoire. Just half an hour, 20 minutes up there. And that's on the 13th of March, and that starts at 6:30 till 8 o'clock, and there'll be refreshments there. So also, tomorrow from 11 a.m, you've got your masterclass in networking and planning workshops. But that ends today, and thank you for coming along. But also, as it was said earlier, you've already made the connections already because you've come here today. You should give yourself a round of applause.